With a heart full of excitement and hope, I embarked on a new chapter of my life in the bustling city with my beloved girlfriend. We had recently moved into a cozy little apartment, and the thrill of exploring uncharted territory was overwhelming. There was something undeniably enchanting about starting fresh in a place I had never been before. As I stepped out to run a quick errand to the grocery store, I couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder at the city's sights and sounds. On my way back home, I found myself texting my girlfriend, eagerly recounting all the fascinating things I had come across during my walk. I gushed about the myriad of activities we could enjoy together, anticipating the endless possibilities that awaited us in this vibrant city. Caught up in my phone conversation, I didn't realize that I had lost my bearings. I felt an inexplicable urge to share every detail of my day with my girlfriend, leading me astray from my intended path. In hindsight, I realized how careless it was not to pay attention to my surroundings, but the excitement of the day had clouded my judgment. Gradually, I became aware of the dramatic shift in my surroundings. The once bustling streets now appeared desolate and eerily abandoned, resembling the scene straight out of an apocalyptic video game. The vacant buildings with boarded-up doors and windows cast a foreboding shadow over the area, sending shivers down my spine. This was nothing like the neighborhood I had traversed not too long ago. Panicking, I glanced at my phone's map, desperately trying to find my way back to familiar territory. My apartment was still around 4 miles away, and with the darkness descending, my unease heightened. The rain began to pour, adding to the ominous atmosphere surrounding me. In my distressed state, I spotted an old taxi with its sign illuminated on top. Relief washed over me at the prospect of finally finding my way home. However, as I approached the vehicle, doubt crept in. It didn't appear to be an official taxi, and my mind couldn't help but recall all the true crime shows I had watched, cautioning against such situations. Nevertheless, the fear of being lost in this unfamiliar and eerie place outweighed my skepticism. I knocked on the window, and the driver cracked it open just enough for me to inquire if he could take me back to my apartment near the gas station. To my dismay, he didn't utter a word in response. Instead, he unlocked the doors, signaling for me to enter. My heart pounded in my chest as I hesitantly got into the taxi. I quickly gave him the address, hoping this was the end of my misadventure. As we set off, I kept a watchful eye on my phone's map, trying to ascertain if we were indeed heading in the right direction. To my growing unease, it became apparent that we were veering off course. Driving away from my apartment, panic gripped me, and I mustered the courage to ask the driver to turn around or let me out so I could find an alternative ride. However, he remained silent, paying no heed to my pleas. The minutes ticked by like agonizing hours as the taxi took me deeper into the deserted outskirts of the city. The rain intensified, seemingly mirroring the turmoil within me. I felt his eyes fixated on me through the rearview mirror, and the sinister silence between us amplified my fear. Eventually, the taxi pulled over, and the driver turned to face me, a malevolent grin stretching across his face. The sight of him sent a chill down my spine, and I couldn't suppress the tremor in my voice as he spoke with a harsh and ominous tone, welcoming me to my final destination. Panic-stricken and desperate to escape, I tried reasoning with him, imploring him to let me go. But my pleas fell on deaf ears as he laughed callously. My heart sank as he opened the back door, yanking me out of the vehicle and sending me crashing to the ground. I struggled to regain my footing, the pain searing through my body. Fear paralyzed me as he lunged at me, brandishing a menacing knife. Tears welled in my eyes as I attempted to scream for help, but fear and shock left me voiceless. In that moment of unimaginable terror, I thought it was the end. However, by some miracle, my desperate screams carried through the rain and reached the ears of a group of people nearby. Their footsteps grew closer, and a glimmer of hope sparked within me. Fearing the consequences of being caught, the driver hesitated and then fled on foot, leaving his taxi behind. The group rushed towards me, their faces etched with concern, and one of them immediately provided aid, applying pressure to the wound on my neck that I hadn't even noticed in the chaos. With trembling hands, they called the police and an ambulance, ensuring that I received the necessary medical attention. The sense of relief was indescribable as I knew I was safe now, surrounded by the kindness and bravery of strangers who risked their own safety to help a fellow human in distress. Months passed, and the haunting memories of that night remained with me. The emotional scars ran deep, forever etched in my heart. As luck would have it, another man was abducted in the same manner in that area. This time, justice prevailed, and the culprit was apprehended. When the authorities called me in for identification, my heart pounded with trepidation, but I knew it was necessary to ensure the safety of others. Seeing the man again sent a surge of terror through my veins, but I was resolute in helping bring him to justice. Thankfully, he was charged and sentenced to a lengthy prison term. Though he never admitted to any other kidnappings, I knew deep down that he was responsible for inflicting similar horrors on others. The closure brought some solace, but the emotional wounds would forever be a part of me. From that fateful night, I vowed to be more cautious and alert, never again allowing my excitement to blind me to potential dangers. The memory of the fear and desperation inside that taxi would remain etched in my mind forever, but I would also forever cherish the memory of those compassionate strangers who came to my rescue. Their brave intervention saved my life and restored my faith in humanity. I resolved to pay their kindness forward and be ever mindful of the welfare of others around me. Gratitude filled my heart for the courageous souls who risked their own safety to help me, reminding me that amidst the darkest moments, there will always be a glimmer of hope and compassion. In the vibrant neighborhood of Venice, California, I resided for quite some time. The coastal charm of the area was undeniable, but beneath the picturesque facade lay a sense of unease, especially when venturing out alone at night. The locality had gained notoriety for its relatively high crime rates and a considerable homeless population, factors that kept me on edge during my late-night walks back home. Safeguarding myself was always a top priority, which is why I made sure to carry a trusty canister of pepper spray with me wherever I went. The thought of falling prey to the city's dark side, just like the countless women whose harrowing stories I had heard, was not something I was willing to entertain. Each time I walked alone after dusk, I took measures to appear resilient and unfazed by the surroundings. My home was merely a few blocks away, but those short distances seemed like endless stretches of vulnerability in the dimly lit streets. Whenever I passed by strangers, I managed a friendly smile, trying to mask my nervousness and avoid drawing any undue attention. My old high school backpack became my everyday companion instead of my purse, as I hoped its worn-out appearance would deter any potential thieves. I was mindful of my clothing choices too, opting for outfits that concealed my body to the greatest extent possible. To me, there was no such thing as being too cautious, not in a place where safety seemed uncertain. One fateful night, as I was walking along, I heard a gruff voice behind me. A man, whom I later discovered was homeless, asked me if I had any spare change. His clothes were tattered, and his eyes had a wild glint to them, suggesting a turbulent mind. Politely, I declined, stating that I had no money to spare. However, his persistence was unsettling, as he grew increasingly aggressive in his tone and demands. "A pretty girl like you must have a few dollars on her," he insisted, leering at me. Talking to strangers was something I never enjoyed, and dealing with someone as unpredictable as him was unnerving. Sensing that this encounter might take an unpleasant turn, I decided to ignore his pleas and quicken my pace. I didn't want to provoke him further, nor did I wish to endure an altercation. Whispering a hasty apology, I tried to put as much distance between us as possible. Yet, no matter how fast I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling of being pursued. The man continued to trail me, hurling insults and unsettling threats my way. "You rich girls always think you're better than us. You're gonna regret this, I promise you that," he bellowed, his voice echoing in the eerie night. Panic gripped me as my heart raced, and I felt the fear coursing through my veins. At that moment, my instincts kicked in, and I reached into my pocket, clutching the canister of pepper spray tightly. With trembling hands, I turned to face him, aiming the pepper spray directly at his face. Summoning every ounce of courage, I yelled, "Leave me alone." But my voice faltered, sounding more like a feeble squeak than a fierce command. The man just laughed, sending a chilling shiver down my spine. Undeterred, he took a step closer, and I could feel my breaths becoming shallower. In a desperate attempt to protect myself, I implored him not to come any closer, assuring him that I didn't want to hurt him. I just wanted to be left alone. However, he seemed oblivious to my pleas, his eyes fixated on me with an unsettling intensity. Without having used pepper spray before, I mustered the courage to pull the trigger, releasing a burst of the stinging liquid directly at him. He recoiled in agony, covering his face with his hands, and stumbled backward, momentarily dazed. Tears welled up in my eyes as I continued to flee, my feet pounding against the pavement as I raced back to the safety of my apartment. Once inside, I locked the door, my trembling hands struggling to find stability. I took a deep breath, attempting to regain composure, but the lingering fear refused to dissipate. The chilling encounter left me shaken to the core, and I spent the rest of that night lying in bed, staring blankly at the ceiling, unable to erase the haunting memories. The unsettling feeling of being watched clung to me in the days that followed, as if the man was lurking nearby, waiting for an opportunity to strike again. I knew I should report the incident to the police, but my previous experiences with slow response times made me hesitant. However, as days turned into weeks, I began to feel more secure again and allowed myself to walk home alone. Naively, I believed that perhaps the man had moved on or was no longer a threat. But one fateful night, as I was returning home from work, my heart nearly leaped out of my chest when I heard familiar footsteps behind me. There he was again, eyes burning with anger, as if the whole night of our previous encounter was replaying in his mind. It was evident that he had not moved on from that incident at all. "You can't get away from me," he shouted, lunging towards me. Panic surged through me, and I instinctively reached for my pepper spray, only to realize that I had forgotten it on the kitchen counter that morning. The realization struck me like a blow to the gut, leaving me feeling defenseless and helpless. I turned around, attempting to run, but he was too fast. He grabbed me, his fingers digging into my skin, as I screamed and struggled to break free. Every punch and kick seemed futile against his unyielding strength. As despair began to envelop me, a beacon of hope appeared in the form of a police car pulling up nearby. 2 officers emerged from the car, rushing towards us, and the homeless man released his grip on me. I stumbled backward, my knees buckling from the harrowing ordeal. The police officers acted swiftly, apprehending the man and taking him into custody. Finally, I was safe. Tears streamed down my face as one of the officers assured me that I would need to make a formal statement about the incident. From that night onwards, I vowed never to walk home alone again. The trauma was too overwhelming, and the fear that had consumed me during those horrifying moments lingered as a constant reminder of the danger lurking in the shadows. In the subsequent weeks, I tried to regain some semblance of normalcy in my life, but the haunting memories persisted. The incident served as a stark reminder of the necessity to remain vigilant and cautious in certain environments, no matter how familiar or comfortable they might seem. Although the man was charged, my hopes for justice were quashed when he received no jail time due to overcrowded prisons in the area. This realization left me disheartened and questioning the efficacy of the justice system. Yet my main concern was the safety of others. I hoped fervently that he would not inflict such terror on anyone else. The experience left an indelible mark on my life, serving as a potent reminder of the importance of situational awareness and personal safety. There were moments when I felt the weight of the world's unfairness upon my shoulders, as if it were a constant battle to protect myself against potential threats lurking in the shadows. In conclusion, my harrowing encounter remains etched in my memory, a stark reminder that safety cannot be taken for granted, especially in an area with a history of crime and homelessness. I hope that sharing my story will raise awareness about the importance of staying vigilant and looking out for one another, for there are times when even the most beautiful places can conceal the darkest secrets. The story I'm about to share with you took place when I was a mere 15 years old, nearly a decade ago now. To provide some context, I was raised by a hardworking single mother who, due to her job demands, could rarely spare the time to keep tabs on my whereabouts or the duration of my outings. Her advice was always simple: stay safe. Little did I know that these two words would resonate deeply with me after what transpired a decade ago, an event that remains etched in my memory as both the most dangerous and exciting episode of my life, the one I wish I had never involved myself in. On that fateful day after school, I walked home with the excitement of playing a new video game my mom had gifted me the day before my birthday. Little did I know that my life was about to take an unforeseen turn. As I strolled, I was approached by a stranger who immediately gave off an unsettling vibe. This man, who appeared to be some kind of gang member with sagging shorts and a sweat-soaked white tank top, walked alongside me and made an offer that left me taken aback and confused. He asked if I wanted to make some money. Puzzled, I inquired about what he meant, and that's when he unfolded his proposition. He offered me a substantial sum of money to deliver a package to a specific address, a place located in a rather shady part of town. I hesitated, aware of the risks involved, but the allure of easy money proved too tempting for a 15-year-old. The thought of a couple of $100 sounded like a fortune, and against my better judgment, I accepted the stranger's offer. As I reflect on that moment, I wish I had been wiser and not let greed cloud my judgment. But youth and naivety got the better of me. With a slight pause, I took a deep breath and decided to go through with it, rationalizing that this might be the easiest way to make some quick cash, especially from a stranger. After a 45-minute journey, I arrived at the designated address, and a sense of unease consumed me. The dilapidated house was covered in graffiti, with broken windows adding to its ominous appearance. Despite my fear, I tried to muster up courage, reminding myself of the money awaiting me. Tentatively, I knocked on the door, hoping to leave the package unattended on the porch and avoid further involvement. But fate had other plans. A burly man with a stern expression opened the door, and I handed him the package. To my horror, he opened it right before my eyes, revealing a stash of cash and drugs, along with drug paraphernalia. I had foolishly stumbled into the dark underbelly of illegal activities. The man turned to me, not seeking my consent, but instead informing me that I was now part of their operation, destined to deliver more packages. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I was now entangled in a web of drugs and violence, far beyond my comprehension and control. The fear that gripped me was paralyzing, and I wondered what would happen if I dared to refuse. My captor's ominous response left me with no choice but to comply. The consequences of declining his demands seemed far too grim to consider. From that day on, my life spiraled into a nightmarish routine. I was handed a duffel bag filled with packages similar to the first one, each accompanied by a list of addresses. My mission was clear. I had to deliver these packages to each location, and only then would I receive my payment. The days turned into weeks, and I found myself getting deeper and deeper into this dangerous world. Every day after school, and even on weekends, I embarked on this perilous journey. I did my best to avoid trouble, knowing that carrying such illicit items could ruin my life. The weight of my actions was immense, and as time passed, I became more entangled in a web of deceit, danger, and desperation. My innocence had been replaced with fear, and I felt utterly alone, with no one to turn to. I yearned to confide in my mother, but the burden she already carried to provide for us left me feeling guilty. I couldn't bear to burden her further with my grave mistakes. My fear and desperation grew as I realized I had no escape from this dire situation. Around 2 months into this dark endeavor, fate intervened again, but this time It was in the form of law enforcement. I was delivering a package in one of the roughest parts of town when the police stopped me, acting on a tip about drug-related activities. My heart pounded as they searched my bag and discovered the drugs and cash. I was immediately arrested, facing serious charges and the prospect of jail time. My mind raced, and I knew I had to come clean, not just for my sake, but for my mother's too. I confessed everything to the detectives, exposing the truth about my coerced involvement in these illicit activities. The police took action, investigating the house where I had made the initial delivery. They found some individuals associated with drugs, but not the dangerous criminals I had encountered. Thankfully, my mother hired a skilled lawyer who specialized in cases like mine, understanding that many teenage boys could find themselves caught in such traps. With the lawyer's guidance, I turned over evidence that supported my claims of being coerced. This crucial cooperation led to a deal with the police, where I agreed to reveal all the addresses I had delivered packages to in exchange for a reduced sentence and the avoidance of jail time. As a result, I spent approximately 6 months in juvenile detention, an agonizing experience that left me with a criminal record at such a young age. Throughout those months, I faced the consequences of my actions, but it was also a period of introspection and growth. My mother, though disappointed, eventually forgave me, and I cherished the second chance I had been given. Looking back, I realized the gravity of my own foolishness. I should have never accepted that initial offer to deliver the package, no matter how tempting the money seemed. The experience has changed me forever, imprinting the fear and danger I faced deeply into my soul. I now value my freedom and understand the importance of making responsible decisions. Gratitude fills my heart for the opportunity to turn my life around. I vowed never to involve myself in any illegal activities again and to resist the allure of quick money. While I still struggle with the memories of my past, I understand that I was just a naive and stupid kid at the time, unaware of the dangers that lurked beyond my understanding. Today, as I stand on the other side of this ordeal, I share my story as a cautionary tale to others. Let my mistakes serve as a stark reminder that we must always think twice before making decisions that could forever alter the course of our lives. I've learned the hard way that it is essential to stay true to our principles and not let ourselves be swayed by temptations that lead down a dark path. The consequences of our actions may haunt us for years to come, but I am determined to be a better person and ensure that my past never defines my future. In the embrace of the cold night air, an inexplicable sense of comfort and serenity beckoned to me. This peculiar affinity with the nocturnal hours began at a tender age, a mere 8 years old, when my young eyes witnessed the disturbing sight of my mother abusing my father. Society would often comment that he should have stood up to her, being a man, and defended himself. However, truth be told, his love for my mother, even in her drunken state, was unwavering, and he would rather endure her blows than raise a hand against her. Every time my mother fell into her altered state, my father would gently tell me to take a walk, seeking to shield me from the painful scene that unfolded within our home. These nightly walks became my refuge, the quietude and darkness enveloping me like a protective cocoon. Amidst the vast stillness of the night, I felt an inexplicable sense of safety and solitude, as though no harm could ever befall me. It was a stark contrast to the perceptions of most, who view the night and darkness as vulnerable, eerie, and unsettling. But for me, those darkened hours brought peace. However, one chilling night forever shattered this sanctuary of mine. 17 years old and recently bereaved by the passing of my mother, my father struggled deeply with her loss. Despite their tumultuous relationship, he was haunted by the memories of their 20-year bond, unable to sever the emotional ties that bound him to her. I, on the other hand, felt an overwhelming sense of relief at her passing, relieved that my father would no longer suffer the torment she inflicted upon him. In search of solace, I embarked on a walk that night, meandering through the familiar neighborhood, trying to grapple with the complex emotions that swirled within me. The deserted Mexican restaurant, shut down a decade prior due to code violations, loomed eerily on the corner of the road. Overgrown with unruly plants and shattered windows, the abandoned establishment had earned a reputation of housing squatters. However, I paid no heed to the rumors, for my focus was on finding clarity amid my turbulent thoughts. As minutes stretched into eternity, I passed by the forsaken eatery, never imagining that its derelict state concealed a chilling encounter. Suddenly, a figure emerged from one of the broken windows, and the sight before me was utterly repulsive. The woman, covered in dirt and filth, exuded a nauseating stench that seemed to pervade the air around her. From a distance of merely 20 feet, the odor reached my senses, sickening me. Although she bore an appalling appearance, I averted my gaze, determined to mind my own business and continue my solitary journey. Alas, fate had other plans for me that night. The stench returned minutes later, much closer this time. An instinctual dread washed over me, and I instinctively turned around, only to find her standing directly behind me. The proximity was suffocating, and I gagged involuntarily. Her reaction was fierce, as she brandished a menacing knife, pressing it threateningly against my stomach. Fear paralyzed me, and I found myself unable to muster a coherent word. Her eyes seemed devoid of any humanity, void of sympathy or remorse for the terror she was inflicting. Her face, marred by sores and wounds, betrayed the effects of drug abuse, or perhaps a cocktail of substances that drove her into a frenzied state. She uttered not a word but conveyed her intentions by patting down my gin pockets and swiftly retrieving my wallet, which she tucked away in her own pocket. Then her eyes locked onto my wristwatch, and without hesitation, I unfastened it and surrendered it to her. Funny enough, my wallet contained no credit cards or money of value, and the watch was a mere trinket, worth no more than $10. Yet, I dared not contest or inform her of this fact, fearing it would enrage her further. I hoped that complying with her demands would appease her, but my hopes were dashed as she led me behind the building. Her touch was repulsive, an invasion of my personal space that sent shivers down my spine. I resisted, struggling to break free, but each time I did, the blade pressed deeper into my skin. Reluctantly, I surrendered, lying there defenseless as she inflicted unimaginable violations upon me. When she was finally satisfied, she withdrew the knife and callously walked away, leaving me broken and traumatized. Her actions that night had stolen something from me forever, the feeling of security and the sanctuary I once found in the night. In the days that followed, I withdrew from the world. Consumed by grief, guilt, and shame, I became a recluse, confining myself to the confines of my room. The pain and despair that engulfed me were unbearable, and I found myself questioning whether life was worth living. Yet, I remained silent, unable to share my harrowing experience with anyone. I feared the ridicule and skepticism that often accompanied the stories of men who had been victimized by women. Society's attitudes, misconceptions, and dismissive remarks left me feeling isolated and weak. So I chose silence, disconnecting from friends and family, and carrying the burden alone. However, life has a way of surprising us, and in my darkest hour, a glimmer of hope emerged. I met a woman named Kate, an extraordinary individual whose warmth and understanding eased the weight on my shoulders. In her presence, I felt a sense of acceptance and compassion that I had longed for. She embraced my vulnerability without judgment, offering a safe space for me to open up and share my deepest wounds. Over 2 years, Kate became my confidant, and during that time, I disclosed the heart-wrenching tale that had been confined to my soul for so long. She listened intently, absorbing every word without interruption or judgment. In that moment of vulnerability, as I recounted the horrors of that night, she held me tightly, reassuring me that she would always stand by my side, no matter the pain of my past. Through our conversations, she helped me realize that reporting the incident to the authorities could not only bring me closure, but also protect others from falling victim to the same torment. I grappled with the decision, my heart torn between facing my fears and burying the past forever. Ultimately, I mustered the courage to file a report, not with the expectation of justice, but to regain control of my life and prevent others from suffering as I had. Reconnecting with my father brought an unexpected sense of peace. Our relationship had been strained, burdened by the weight of my mother's presence, but time and mutual understanding helped us bridge the chasm that had divided us for so long. His joy upon hearing from me was palpable, and I found comfort in knowing that our shared pain had forged a new bond between us. Regrettably, the police investigation bore no fruit, and the perpetrator remained elusive, her identity hidden within the shadows of the night. Although a part of me longed for retribution, I also recognized that healing and moving forward were of paramount importance. The journey toward recovery was arduous, but I persevered, finding strength in my wife's unwavering support and love. 3 years have passed since Kate and I exchanged vows, forming a bond that transcends the horrors of my past. Together, we have welcomed a beautiful daughter into our lives, a symbol of hope and renewal. Life has regained its brilliance, and though the scars of that haunting night linger, they no longer dictate the course of my life. As I recount this harrowing tale, my purpose is not to evoke pity or sympathy. Instead, I share it to let other men know that they are not alone, that vulnerability is not weakness, and that healing is possible with the right support. Society's norms and expectations should never silence our voices, for it is only by speaking our truth that we can liberate ourselves from the chains of trauma. To my fellow men, I extend my hand and my heart, assuring you that your stories matter. Together, we can shatter the barriers that hinder our healing and foster a world where the strength to overcome such adversity lies not in silence but in unity. For it is in unity that we find the power to transform ourselves and inspire others to rise above the darkest moments of their lives.